What's up, my precious little pack, and welcome back to VEGA Conflict. So the contact event is drawn to a close. I'm going to give a few thoughts on it, how it could have been better, how it could have been much better, but it could have also been much worse. Anyone with Axis tier tech easily could do the event. Most people were farming bases, leaving the actual ship-related targets to anyone that was actually farming the fleets. The fleets were interesting to say the least. I figured out how to do the fleets my way using my cruisers and stuff like that for minimal repair time in low levels. I also easily found out how I could do, well, I actually predicted and expected exactly what kicks I delivered on, so I refit my fleet, my main fleet, the 2 days before the event. I gave them exactly what I knew they would need to be free repair time for the targets I'd be aiming for. That was how predictably overpowered the fleets were. I knew exactly what they would be, and I prepared for them accordingly. I also set up a schedule that I stuck to the entire event. All because of how predictable the fleets were, and I also kept resistors and stuff like that, credit resistors specifically, just so that if Kixeye were to increase their damage, I would just slap on the additional resistors of the higher level than the ones that I put on the ships in the first place. Just so I'd be able to counter it. I was expecting it, again. That never happened, didn't have to change the fleet fitting or anything for that matter. All I did was equip 2 armors, 2 level 1 tungstens to all the guardians. That's it. That's all that was needed. And a level 1 credit resistor. An energy resistor, just level 1. Now, am I going to say the event was overall good? No, I'm going to give it a huge miss. It's not even in the ballpark of most of the daily strikes that we get. The payout is very, very close to the daily strikes that we do for intel, but the actual prizes were way too expensive compared to the points payout, and we didn't have high-level targets to hit. They stopped at level 80. They didn't have a 90 or a 100, so we couldn't even do above that, and the 80s only gave out 100,000 intel, so you'd have to hit 20 of them just to get the new ship. Well, I didn't do that. I stuck to my schedule because I expected exactly what I got from the fleets that I was hitting. So while everybody else was doing the bases, I was free to do whatever I wanted with the fleets. And funny thing is, I got attacked on the second day and lost my main fleet. I was still able to farm due to a secondary fleet. I didn't prepare the fleet. That's actually a fleet that's supposed to replace my main fleet. All I had to do was get a paladin for it. Put the paladin in the fleet, started farming again. That was it. They were so predictable this time around that 2 days ahead of the event starting, I started refitting and preparing. 2 days. I had no idea how much damage they would do or anything like that. I had no idea how much their chains would do. Except for, I kind of did. I based it solely off of the weapon. The unlockable weapon. And I decided that for the level 40 to 45s, they would equip a single weapon on some of the ships, so I could calculate the damage that way. Well, it would be around that. For the higher level fleets, I decided they would put 2 weapons, 3 weapons, 4 weapons, so I calculated it all based off of the weapons that we could unlock. And you know what? It actually worked extremely well. I didn't manage to clean out the store, but I came pretty close to it. I'm only missing 2 things. I picked up resources and stuff like that. However, I cannot produce or build the ships yet because I still have to upgrade a few different things. I have to upgrade ship lab, ship factory, and the weapon and the arms lab. But that's not that hard because I'll just keep up with doing the daily missions, and every time the time tokens are available, I'll pick up the 4-hour module tokens. I'll chop that upgrade time down as much as I can. Now, as for the fitting for the fleet that I was using, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you. Standard paladin carry that I've been using the entire time. Talonite 3 could be easily replaced by any of the tungsten improved armors for any of the advanced resistors, or add a resistor in general, which I should do at some point. Harmonics, and then the drones. This is the same fitting it's had for months now. I haven't changed it in the slightest because it's performed the exact way I want it to. The Guardians, they only needed one change. They just needed a resistor, so I put level 1 because it was only 20 blood amber. It's 1 day worth of farming up a daily mission. And then 2 tungsten to top out its weight so it can't have any more on it. Not all of the ships were fitted like that because not all of them have the additional alien weapon on board. So, under that respect, they had a little less, but overall they performed exactly how I needed them to. Kicks out was that predictable that I could produce a fleet just to farm on a specific schedule of 6 hours to 6 hours 30 minutes to 7 hours each day. Well, not quite. First day I only farmed 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and this is all spaced out time frames. So I would play for about an hour, log out, and do whatever else I wanted to, or work for an hour. Whether that be touching up my skills in StarCraft or any other number of games. But regardless, I got exactly what I expected from the fleet that I produced. Well, refitted just to fight a fleet that we hadn't even had in the game yet. All based solely off the fact that we picked up their weapon. And we had the weapons in here, and I based the damage they would do off of the level 1 weapon. And when I first saw the ships, I immediately counted off the ships in the fleet, and I said each one will have this, except for when I saw the bastions open up, I saw they were using some type of pulse weapon, because it was piercing through the target. It wasn't the echo ray. Well, it wasn't the Epsilon echo cannon, because it wasn't bouncing. It was actually hitting and going through. So I immediately decided that I would just say that it does about 200 damage per second, except for that's before it's reduced by shielding, and then resisted by armor. So everything I did was based solely off of that. Now, as for a few other things, there's actually a few things that me and a few other people were talking about during the event. Fellow YouTuber, Toxic Bait, few of you may know him, few of you may not. We were talking about different types of drones. A while back, kicks I wanted to allow us to repair in Sector. It was in a State of the Game post. I can't remember which one now, but I do know it was in the State of the Game. But it was something they wanted to allow. They wanted to try and find a way to allow us to repair our fleets in the sector. And we actually came up with something fairly simple, because carriers are a standing point of where everything gets better or worse. Well, we came up with, what he came up with was repair drones and stuff like that. I changed them to be fitting for what they would be rolled. So instead of a repair drone, you have a repair squadron. It'll do the exact same as what the drone would do. And I actually decided that I would make separate videos on these. The first two that I'm going to talk about are the repair squadron and a production assistance wing. Now please note that these will reduce the combat efficiency of whatever you equip them on. Not by reducing the damage, but you're replacing the actual fighter squadrons that combat the opponents in this regard. And I'm going to talk the level 1, and I have the stats right here. I've taken the time to produce the stats, the requirements, everything for them, with the exception of resource requirements, because I was just going to say they should have the exact same that the researchable squadron and wing in your base already have, so they'd be the exact same thing, except for they would require them. But the repair squadron 1 stats, at level 1, it's 75 hit points. It restores 10 hit points per second, and it can fly for 15 seconds. It can only move at 1,000 meters per second. It has 7,500 meters maximum combat range. It only weighs 250 tons in mass. So it's not very, very heavy, but it's not very, very light, and depending on how far your carrier is away from the rest of the fleet, when they start taking damage, it'll take a few seconds for the repair squadron to get to the ships, effectively reducing the amount of time they can repair for. In total, if they can launch and immediately latch on to one of your ships that's damaged, it could be any number of time frames for how long it would take for them to repair the ship, but you only have a 5-minute combat interval. and calculating it all out, you'd be able to fix up a max level fleet if you fight a few separate low level targets, but you'd also be leaving yourself open to be attacked by another player. Now, time to read through the rest of it. The passive skill, and yes, each of these have a passive skill that's supposed to benefit you outside of combat, or in the case of the Production Assistance Wing, which I will get to, it has a separate role. First off, when it's passive skill, it's 1 hit point restored per second when out of combat, and it does not stack with multiple squadrons, i.e., you can't put multiple squadrons on the same carrier and then have this passive go up, so you can't say, oh, it's repairing 4 hit points per second. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't as efficient for repairing Xeno Division and up, where their repair time ratios just became absurdly overpowered, hit points and everything like that. So it'll restore 1 hit point per second instead of the standard of actually doing the repair time for the fleet. So it'll restore 1 hit point per second over time, and it's per second out of combat. So your fleet will slowly heal, so it could be beneficial, but it can only repair ships that are not destroyed. If they're destroyed, you have to go back to your ship, you'd have to go back to your base to repair them at the fleet bay. But research time, 8 hours. Requirements, Fighter Squadron 1, and it's researched at the ship lab. It's not researched at the weapons lab because it's not a weapon. It's a support ship. It's a support squadron. It's specifically meant to be researched as a separate thing from the weapons lab because it's not a weapon. Now let's take a look at the Repair Squadron Level 3 stats. Again, 75 hit points, but now it restores 20 hit points per second, and it still flies for 15 seconds. All the stats are the same, with the exception of the mass goes up to 550 tons. It goes up 150 per level. And again, the same passive skill, and it does not stack. It only repairs 1 hit point per second, so again, you get the same low repair time ratio. The research time of this one is 16 hours. The requirements are the Repair Squadron 2 and the Fighter Squadron 3. And it is, again, researched at the ship lab, not the weapons lab. Just going to make sure this doesn't go inactive real quick. Next up, we have the Production Assistance Wing. You guys should get a kick out of this, but there's such a minuscule alteration in the game that it would benefit everyone, coiner and free player. First off, the stats run down. 150 hit points, because it is a wing, it is for your base, but it's restricted, and I'll explain that later. 150 hit points. 24 energy damage per second, because it has to be able to fight, because it's being put in the base, but it doesn't actually have a repair wheel. It doesn't go around repairing your modules. No. It's got 15 seconds of flight time, 1,000 meters per second speed, 8,000 meters maximum combat range, and it weighs 500 tons in mass at level 1. Research time, 12 hours. Requirements, Fighter Wing level 1. Passive skill, it has a 1% reduction build in ship build times and refit times, and it stacks, so the more of them you have equipped, the more you get the buff. Now here's the thing. The restriction is they can only be equipped on your ship's factory only. Your ship factory only. So you can only equip them, so you can only have a maximum of 3 if you have a level 10 plus ship factory. And they're researched at the ship lab because, again, they're not a combat wing. They're supposed to be a support wing or another type of wing altogether. Now let's take a look at the level 3. Production Assistance Wing stats level 3 is 150 hit points again, 48 energy damage per second, 15 seconds flight time. It has the exact same 1,000 meters per second speed, 8,000 meters maximum combat range, and it weighs 1,100 maximum tons. Research time, 24 hours. The requirements are the Production Assistance Wing 2 and the Fighter Wing 3. The passive skill is a 3% reduction in ship build and refit times, and it stacks, again, so you can get up to a 90% off of ship build and refit times. And the reason I went with 1% was it's because 1% per level. Level 1 gives you 1% reduction, level 2 gives you 2% reduction, level 3 gives you 3% reduction, except for you can only equip 3 of them, so the maximum level 1 would be the most efficient. But this is where it quickly goes down because you're removing 3 squadrons that would be used for combat for efficient combat in your base. You're effectively losing them, but I figured it would be okay because we recently got the hangar base, and I'm going to talk about them, well, the hangar modules, soon. So I want to talk about them more than what I did before. But again, and all the resource requirements for these are going to be the exact same as their equivalent fighter squadron, or fighter wing in this case. So they would take up the exact same resources that the others would. They would just be researched after it and at a separate structure. Well, a separate module in this case. And there's actually two more. One that Toxic Bait thought of once again, and I will leave the link in the description to his channel. And it's called the Sabotage Wing. I haven't made up the stats for it because I'm actually going to make it in a separate video along with the squadron I actually thought of, and these will both be squadrons. Well, the one he wants, the Sabotage Wing, will be for your base, whereas I actually have thought of a damage control squadron. Again, it'll be a support squadron, it won't be a combat squadron. And I just want to take a moment to talk about how the repair squadrons would work. Since we can't target our own ships, they would repair the target that has... Well, actually, they would go out to repair the target that is damaged that's closest to the carrier first. So if you have a ship at 50% health that is 7,000 meters out, they're not going to go after it if you have a ship that is damaged by 5% and it's within 2,000 meters. They're going to go after the 2,000 meter first. So it's all based on the range around the carrier, and it's prioritizing closest first. But that was to point out that Kixeye could have done what they wanted to about doing the repairs in sector just by simply giving us a squadron with a passive skill when it's equipped on a carrier. You can equip multiple of them on the carrier to have a lot of active combat repair. While you're in combat, you could farm low-level fleets to repair yourself that way, but you'd have to actively be fighting to get those repairs, because if you're just passive... Oh, and something else, the passive skill is inactive, the fleet is currently docked, so you can't have it docked and be repairing by your fleet bay and by the passive skill. It is inactive when it's docked. So you can't get a bonus repair from that. But let me know what all of you think about that. It could be interesting. I can see how it would change how the game plays, because people would be able to play it a little bit more frequently. But coiners would also have these things much sooner. Even though they're low requirements for everybody, we'd still have to take the time to research them. 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, and each one would be researched at the same structure, so it would take us at least 2.5 days to research, and that was the goal. Whereas a coiner can just quickly put their coins in the game, and they already have it. But those are the two things that we were talking about in-game. Next up, there's actually the alien strike going on. I do want to recommend exactly what to get from here. First off, the suppressor and the paladin. I wouldn't recommend getting the blank hull for the suppressor because it costs the same as the blueprint. I'd recommend the exophase, the harmonic exophase shield level 1 and level 3. Level 3 for your carrier, level 1 for guardians when you get them. I'd recommend the harmonic agility sport field, and I'm actually going to be farming up some of these because I could use some blue tails. But for the fitting, I would recommend for any low-level ones to keep their builds low that can get their hands on the Paladin for any reason. Fury Drone 1 and the Blue Tail Drone level 1. As for turrets, I can't recommend them because I don't really use the newer tier turrets in my base. And then to go along with the suppressor for its anti-squadron rule, because it does 75% increase versus squadrons, which includes drones, as far as I understand. Pick up the Seeker Missile 3. I have it equipped on a single ship, and it does eat drones up. But since they nerfed them and made it so that they can only target a single ship instead of multiple, it takes it a little while to be able to eat through the health of the drones in higher level combat. But in low level farming fleets, or low level combat fleets, whether it be PvP or PvE, it does fulfill its role. And as you mark upgrade it, it gets a stronger buff versus the squadrons. Now, depending on which ship you pick up and which one you want to build, I can recommend the time tokens. If you're going to be buying and producing the suppressor, I would recommend the Xeno Division tokens, because the suppressor is from the Xeno Division. Paladin Carrier is from the Axis tier. and I could recommend it if you pick up the Paladin. But there isn't much else going on in-game because I'm still working on stats and stuff like that. Hopefully you enjoyed this little talk through as much as I have. The contact event was, again, I'm just going to say it was a miss, again, only due to the fact that I found it way too predictable, and the fact that I prepared for it 2 days in advance to the event was quite hilarious to me, but to other people it seemed like it might seem strange that I prepared for an event without even knowing what the targets were, but I based it all simply off of the technology we could get through the event. They were actually doing lower damage than what the weapons were, but they were doing exactly what I thought they would. But I'm gonna also recommend a few fleet builds. First off, for players who only used researchable tech for now, I have a couple of little Rancor fleets. First off, I have a Rancor broadsword, and I'm gonna show these guys off. Actually, I should do that right now.
Your orders.
And this fleet can hit level 27 targets for free repair time. And this is using researchable tech and tech that you can acquire in the Planet Strike. And the sole goal of it is just to show you what they can do. First off, the Rancors are equipped with 4 level 4 Polaron rays, whereas the broadswords are equipped with the repeating Polaron ray, which is acquired through Planet Strike. The repeating is the one that bounces right there. They also have the exact same top damage and range and everything. They just bounce. They also do reduce module damage. And as you can see, easy farming. And along with that, the fleet is also equipped, as you can see, due to the cargo. They have cargo bays. I increased it just so that they could farm resources. These are specifically low repair cost, high yield resource fleets. Now I'll show you the fitting. Level 1 metaphase, level 1, the literal level 1 tier 1 armor you researched, the smallest one. The biggest thing you're going to have to research will be the guns, the special, and the cargo module is optional. I did it on there because I needed to farm resources, but I needed small fleets that I could rapidly produce. In turn, you can produce 2 to 3 of them per day, depending on if you're in a clan or not. But the sole goal was make a small, low damage, high range energy fleet that couldn't miss the target. Polaron ray aims in, hits the target, but they also have low damage, so you have to kind of counter that with how many you have. Whereas the repeating Polaron ray has the jump damage, so it can hit one target and then trail to others, and it can in turn do more damage than the normal researchable Polaron ray, just because it can bounce between targets. And again, it is a free repair time ship. Both of these are free repair. This one's from tier 1, this one's from tier 2. Both of their fittings are fairly light in terms of weaponry. And this fleet, this is hilarious. I produced all of these during the event and I stopped producing them. I want to produce a Rancor fleet specifically, very, very specifically, just to damage the Altarian level 40 fleet. I wanted them to do 1% of the fleet's damage just to show that you could still scratch them. I did more than scratch them. This fleet, they actually destroyed one of the ships and stripped the first 2 of the, what I'm assuming are cutters right now, of all their shielding, and then stripped them down to half health. They did in turn 2 to 3% of the total fleet's health's damage in damage, literally at the beginning of the fight. But I figured you get a kick out of that. These are just little tiny manifold missiles. I've called them the Manny Rancors, just because they're equipped with the manifold missile. It's expensive to equip and expensive to repair on these little guys, but I did so just because I wanted to see the tiny tier scratch the current tier ships, and it was worth it. It was well worth it, and it was funny. And now that I think about it, I really wish I had recorded it and uploaded it, because I think all of you would have gotten a little bit of joy out of it too. but I'm also producing, well, I'm still refitting these ones, but the Rand Cortez fleet is essentially the exact same as these. This will be the fitting. It's supposed to use mostly researchable technology with the exception of the Metaphase 1, but you can get that from level 27 and up targets. Yeah, you can get it from level 27 and up targets, and I do not see one right here. Right there. You can get it right here. Metaphase shield level 1, and again, you can farm it easily using your standard researchable shields, so start off with it and then switch over to the standard Metaphase level 1 once you unlock it. But it's been quite entertaining, I have to say the least. The event was interesting, but overall lackluster. Targets were overpowered, which was expected, and most people were doing the bases as I said. General recap of the video: it covers the repair squadrons, the production assistance wings, my thoughts on the contact event, and I'm going to talk more about the actual Altarians in another video because me and somebody else were picking fun at them, and it actually brought up a lot of questions in the back of my head that I would actually like answered.
Standing ready.
Ship completed.
Calling, sir.
Fleet.
But Kixeye has a lot that they need to do in-game to improve it overall. And there's a lot of holes in the story that I'm actually quite interested in actually finding out. First off, the current Altarian ambassador, well, the envoy, his sister is the one leading the opposing faction. That seems a bit iffy to me. What's her story and stuff like that? I'd rather hear both sides of the story than just one, then fight the other, and then find out, oh, this one was the good one, we were actually working with the evil one. Really, really, really need to put a little bit more emphasis on that, and especially when I'm actually curious about it. But I'm going to go ahead and end the video here before it runs any longer. I've talked about more than enough in the video. So below, you can feel free to either add, change stats, or do any number of other things to what I've said. Leave your thoughts on the contact event. Did you get the new ship? Did you get the weapons? Did you get that type of stuff for it? Did you get shields, armor? Overall, did you enjoy the event? Was it a miss for you as well? And stuff like that. Simple things that I typically ask at the end of a video. But feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you actually like this video. You can always subscribe for more. There's more than just this on the channel. I haven't been doing anything other than VEGA lately, but I'm going to get back into it fairly soon. But I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I'll see y'all later, everybody.